Welcome to another OU Insider Under the Visor Sooners podcast. And Happy New Year! This is the first installment of the 2025 version of the OU Insider Under the Visor Sooners podcast, powered by, and this new sponsor, now that 2025 is around, Riverwind Casino. Thank you so much for that sponsorship. We got some more bills to pay before we get into it, but we got a lot of transfer portal stuff to talk about. Lots of stuff going on in the portal, lots of coaching movement, lots of rumors, buzz, all that. We're going to talk about that right here. OU's got a big basketball game coming up as well as they take on number 4, travel to Tuscaloosa to take on number 4 Alabama, number 12 Oklahoma versus number 4 Alabama on Saturday at 5 p.m. So there is a lot to talk about. But Parker, let's pay some bills.
Yes, got to get a good word in for the folks at Riverwind Casino. Sooner fans, you deserve the ultimate gaming experience. Riverwind Casino has been the Metro's premier gaming destination for over 18 years. With over 2,800 electronic games, table games, bars, and dining options, plus the best live music in the Metro, it's no surprise that Riverwind is always a good time. Can confirm, I drive past Riverwind every single day. It's the exit off of I-35 that leads to my house. So it's always packed out there. I know a lot of you that listen also spend a good deal of time out at Riverwind Casino because it is the place to be for gaming, for live events in the OKC metro area. Nobody does it better than Riverwind. So very pleased to welcome them as the title sponsor of the Under the Visor podcast. Where to begin, Brandon? There's quite a lot of news floating around in the OU ether right now.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I guess let's start with the defensive coordinator stuff, just because everybody wants to talk about the linebacker coach, defensive coordinator. Like, what else is going to be happening as far as staffing goes? Obviously, Oklahoma lost Greg Lilly today, right?
Chuck Lilly.
Chuck
Lilly.
I said Chuck Lilly to man, I'm on like no sleep. Long story. Chuck Lilly to West Virginia. But they also didn't like try to keep him. So if that doesn't tell you anything, at the same time, look, it looks optically, it doesn't look great, but if you kind of know kind of the under the surface information that we just told you, then you know that wasn't that. It's a loss and it hurts optically, but right? Like they're going to find somebody else to fill that position pretty strongly. As far as the defensive coordinator stuff goes, I don't know, man. Like everybody wanted it to be Brandon Hall. Brandon Hall. Yep. I'm trying to word this because I don't want to say too much on this, but like he would take the job if he has to take the job. He's comfortable calling the plays. But you got to look at it from a person that loves the University of Oklahoma, and that's Brandon Hall. Like, if you find somebody on the staff outside of Brent Venables, probably Todd Bates, Bill Bedenbaugh, DeMarco Murray, right? Some people are going to hate that, but Joe John Finley, like, they love the University of Oklahoma.
It's true.
And, like, for Brandon Hall, he grew up around Norman. He went to the University of Oklahoma. He was a GA. He was a student assistant. He did everything coming up at OU, and his love for the University of Oklahoma is strong. So much so that, and I'm going to quote a source close to him, and they said, do not want to end up in the situation of like a legend like Seth Luttrell, where it's hard to come back if something goes awry. Now, if something was to get fixed in 2025, and let's say Oklahoma goes out and wins 8, 9, 10 games in 2025, and they have to find somebody to call the plays. Let's say Brent Venables was the one that did it. Todd Bates, whoever they bring in at linebacker, sounds like Wes Goodwin would be the guy at that spot. And Brandon Hall were the guys that come up with the game plan, and Brent Venables called it. If they go out and they win a bunch of games, and Brent Venables the next year goes, I want to CEO this, and I don't want to be doing it. I don't want to call the plays anymore. Brendan Hall would take the job at that point because everything would be solidified. They wouldn't be coaching for their livelihoods at that point. Does that make sense? Like
It does.
there's a lot people need to understand. Like when you love something so much, you don't want to be extradited away from it for the rest of your life. This is
Yeah.
home
Well,
for him.
yeah.
So
And unfortunately, and he's witnessed that happen
multiple
firsthand
times
with Seth Luttrell, certainly. And
and
I think,
almost Levy at almost.
yeah, yeah. And to an extent, I mean, that's happening right now with Joe John Finley.
Yeah.
I mean, OU fans hate the guy.
Yeah.
They absolutely
He's a
despise him.
freaking legend.
He
It's
wore the
crazy.
uniform. He was an all conference dude at Oklahoma. He played in the NFL. It matters to him. Success at the University of Oklahoma is something that he takes personally because he knows far better than most what it means to
Yep.
put that uniform on your back. But, if the results aren't there on the field or on the recruiting trail, the fan base will turn on you. And
Yeah.
Joe John Finley's feeling that. No, like I understand where Brandon Hall's coming from there because you don't want to be put in a compromising position like that where uh, as somebody who grew up around the program, as somebody who attended the University of Oklahoma, as somebody that has served on multiple staffs at the University of Oklahoma, you don't want to have to get to a point where you're forced to walk away from it all with a
And
sour
never
taste
be
in
able to come
everybody's
back.
mouth. And then you're not, I mean, like, for instance, is Seth Luttrell ever going to be able to walk into a bar or a restaurant in Norman, Oklahoma again? Because I guarantee you, these days, people no longer see
And
him as the captain of the national championship winning 2000 team. They see him as the offensive coordinator that flopped. And so, shoot, man, it's an understandable plight for Brandon Hall.
and
Completely understandable.
he would take it. Like he if he has to take it, if like Venables comes in and says, "You're taking the job," he'll take it and he'll do it. I think I want to put that out there for everybody. Like you're talking about a super successful defensive coordinator at Troy, right? Like super successful. Like they were good when he was there, and good. He built it after he left. They were what, one or two in the country at one point. The year after he left, with the roster that he left for that staff, and he was an interim head coach. Like he knows how to run a program. He knows how to run a defense. Like he is good at. And if there's anybody that knows Brent Venables' defense, it's Brandon Hall. So there's that. That's a good one to help with all that. Ran the same defense at Clemson. People don't at Clemson. He followed Brent Venables, and I think people need to understand that it's a tough follow. It was like Mike Stoops following Brent Venables in 2012. Like there was nothing good that was going to come of that, right? Like you followed a legend. Mike Stoops was his own legend, and everybody thought he was going to be the previous Mike Stoops, and everybody kind of saw that maybe Brent Venables had a lot to do with those defenses in the early 2000s. And so I it's a tough follow for Wes Goodwin. He can go and learn more under Brent Venables at Oklahoma if that's what happens. And
Yeah.
we kind of hear it's trending in that direction a little bit. However, however, and again, we got to be super vague on this. Like there is a chance Oklahoma goes and swings for a few big names at DC. You can have the face all you want. I know
Yeah,
what I
I
know, and it still was brought up to me again today. And you know the source, and they know, and they know. So like
well,
it's legit. It's can it happen is the thing.
yeah, exactly. Two clashing perspectives here.
Yep.
One being if it's as simple as Wes Godwin is your Cody C and linebackers coach, why hasn't that happened yet? I mean, you're not waiting on anything.
Godwin will not call the plays. I've been told that multiple times if he comes in.
Yeah. And then but the other side of the coin is that if Oklahoma were to swing at a big name, for instance, I think the concern in many people's minds is going to be if Oklahoma were to go and try and poach an elite defensive mind from another institution, would they be willing to pay what is necessary to do so? That's less of a concern to me
Mhm.
as this. Does whoever that individual may be understand enough of
Hmm.
Brent Venables' scheme and the nuances and concepts therein to effectively inherit play calling responsibilities within the framework of that defense? And or does Brent Venables trust that individual enough in a year when he's coaching for his job to go hands off the wheel and let that individual call their defense and implement their scheme?
The name that I've I'm talking about, yeah, I think there would be trust there.
Okay.
I undoubtedly, I think there would be trust there, and I think there's a few names out there. I'm told, but just like the one in particular I'm talking about, yes, I do believe that to be the case. But it's something that it's not even we're not even bringing the name up because it's not far enough down the line to even talk about, and there are other reasons for that. But and it's not like we're being vague on purpose. Like
Yeah.
if I could say it, I would say it. Like I promise you, all, I would say it. But anyways, do you? Here's my thing. Will Brent Venables have that moratorium on not going after Clemson, defensive players? There's one in the portal right now, and Oklahoma hasn't even really been involved because
Yeah.
it's a Clemson guy. Like, I will never understand that. Like, at some point, there has to be a what's the phrase I'm looking at?
An
When
expiration
an
date?
expiration date maybe, or like when they can't go back and get you on something.
A
Uh,
statute of
statute
limitation?
limitation. There's got to be statute of limitations on things, right?
Yeah,
Like,
well, and to me, that kind of comes down to whether or not you hire Wes Goodwin, because that moratorium is probably re-engaged if Oklahoma brings in Wes Goodwin. But if not, you'd have to think at a certain point in time, Brent is at least willing to entertain the idea of taking
what if
transfers
Sammy
from
Brown
Clemson.
wanted to get in the portal? Obviously, probably not. His uncle's a
If
chair coach.
Sammy, okay, I will say this: if Sammy Brown wanted to get in the portal and come to Oklahoma, and Oklahoma and Brent Venables did not want to take Sammy Brown out of respect for Dabo Sweeney, that's a borderline fireable offense because there's
You want to bring up
absolutely
the names that were they turned away in 2022?
no, I really don't.
Just kick people in
Nope,
the balls real
nope,
quick because
nope.
folks,
Don't
if
go
we
there.
told you your hair, you would pull your hair out.
Mhm. There were
It
some
is
very,
bad.
very talented defensive players that wanted to
There
follow
was an
Brent
All
Venables.
American crying on the phone to him, literally in tears. I'm following you, coach. And he said no out of respect for Dabo. I again, I respect Brent because he has those
Oh yeah,
morals and he stands his ground. But at the same time, I'm like, dog, you you went 6-7 twice. Like, and I know the defense wasn't the reason why you went 6-7 this time, but dadgum, like, if Sammy Brown or Brian Barisi wants to get in the portal and go to Oklahoma, you do it.
yep.
You do it. So I just I don't know. There's some. It's interesting. For Oklahoma, I will say this: when the Peter Woods stuff was going on, the buzz about him getting in the portal,
Mm,
the team that everybody talked about was Oklahoma behind the scenes there for a bit. So like OU was
yeah.
like the team that everybody was like, if he gets in, he's going to Oklahoma. Oklahoma or Alabama was like, it's Oklahoma or Alabama. So at least you kind of got the vibe that Oklahoma wasn't going to have a moratorium there. And again, like you said, that would be a fireable offense if they said, no, you're not going to take Peter Woods. The hell you're not. How
Yeah.
much money do you need is what the donors will say.
I tell you,
um,
one thing I hate about this time of year is just how you constantly have to stay on top of news, um, because there is no off season anymore, as if there was much of an off season before. But now with the
it's called
transfer portal,
burnout,
it's
bro.
one thing after another. I will say the thing I love about this time of year is that, and particularly this time of year, the few weeks over the holiday season, is you come home from work, there's always football on TV. I got one eye on the Serve Pro First Responder Bowl between North Texas and Texas State right now. Um, Loving the football overload that we're getting these last
Yeah.
few weeks. But on that note, and we talk of endless portal buzz and endless nuggets of news, that brings us to Kendall Daniels and Marvin Jones, both of whom were on campus as we sit here and record this on a Friday afternoon. They were on campus yesterday, Thursday, going into Friday. Marvin Jones, of course,
As
former
we
five
recorded, Kendall
star,
Daniels is still on campus,
yeah,
by the
former
way.
5 star recruit Marvin Jones. Signed with Georgia out of high school after very nearly committing to Oklahoma. The Sooners got very close there due to the influence of former defensive ends coach Jamar
Mhm.
Cain. But he spends 2 seasons at Georgia, transfers to his father's alma mater, Florida State. His dad was one of the greatest to ever wear the garnet and gold for the Seminoles. Spends a year there. He's back in the transfer portal. Oklahoma is back on him, and they're back in the market for his services. He was on campus. And of course, I guess we should probably start with Kendall Daniels because, Brandon, I know you've known and covered him much more extensively than I have. He comes from Beggs, Oklahoma, was a
Mhm.
blue chipper in the 2021 recruiting class, signed with Texas A&M out of high school, spent, what, 2 months there, asked out of his national letter of intent, entered the transfer portal, landed at Oklahoma State after the Sooners engaged with him, but unsuccessfully pitched him on a defensive vision that at the time he was just not really on board with. But after wait, 4 seasons in Stillwater,
Mhm.
he is in the transfer portal looking for somewhere else to play his final year of eligibility. And Oklahoma, right there in the mix. What do you think of those two processes right now? That of Marvin Jones and that of Kendall Daniels.
So Marvin Jones actually stayed on campus way longer than he was supposed to today, um, and had the Michael Patterson McDonald stuff. I would have had the note up a lot earlier, and then I did the spot on with you all in the KREF. But yeah, that whole situation is interesting because from what I'm told, the visit went like extraordinarily well, and to the point where Oklahoma was pitching him on not going to Texas. Now, I don't know if that Texas visit's taking place or not. I haven't been able to confirm that one way or the other. It's expected that it was expected to take place. He was supposed to go, but he kept staying longer and longer at OU, and they were working on keeping him as long as they could. I think Oklahoma has a shot. Now, granted, I don't know that Oklahoma is going to pay up the money. I think what you can offer at Oklahoma that you can at Texas is there's an open spot opposite of our Mason Thomas,
Yeah.
and you can be that guy if you want to be that guy.
Texas
And
has a lot of edge talent right now,
they have a ton, and so
which is not a bad thing by any means, but
no,
can
but
come back to bite you when it comes to recruiting a guy like Marvin Jones, who's got, his clock is ticking. He has two
yeah,
years of eligibility left, but when you got 2 years of eligibility left and you're a 4 or 5 star recruit, you don't really want to be a rotational piece, a guy coming off the bench. You want to get the chance to
yeah,
start. And as it stands at Texas, with dudes like Ethan Burke, Colin Simmons, Colton Vosick, Trey Moore, like it's a lot trickier of a proposition there than it would be in
yeah.
Norman.
So I mean, at the end of the day, Oklahoma can pitch him getting paid quite a bit of money. I
Yeah.
would assume, and I'm again, I don't know the price, but I would assume in upwards of 800,000 or so would be my guess. I would guess that would be the price tag there. Just I honestly have zero inclination of what it is. I'm just off of other prices I've heard being thrown around for other people throughout the portal. I just figure that's probably a figure that would be close at least. Um, and he'd be worth it talent wise. Upside for him is, I mean, first round. Like I don't think that's even a question. Um, I don't. Oklahoma feels good about it. They feel good about where they stand. Um, Source even equated it to Dominic Williams to me earlier today. They said, "Look, this feels a lot like Dominic Williams, where
Hmm.
money is involved and there's quite a bit of it, but so is getting on the field and getting on the field like right now and
Yeah.
being developed right now. And obviously, Texas is going to develop DNs. They proved it with the talent they have and all that. But it's just, it makes a lot of sense to go to Oklahoma. And I think it does for his dad almost went to OU. He almost went to OU out of high school. And now, second time around, we'll see. As far as Kendall Daniels goes, I asked before we got on the podcast, I checked in with the source and they were like, yeah, man, things are going really well. He's still on campus. They're still hanging out. They're still talking. They're doing everything. Um, and this was close to 4 o'clock. So we'll see. Um, it's weird because that thing was dead, bro. That thing, like, they weren't even really talking. Then
Yep.
all of a sudden he's like, I, I, I think, and I've been told this a little bit, that he had a bunch of offers from a lot of people. It got down to where his heart's at. And from what it sounds like, his heart's at OU. So we'll see. We'll see. I'll
What you like to
believe it when
hear.
I see it. I'll believe it when I see it. I just want to throw that out there, but it does
But
sound
that
like
kind of tracks, doesn't it,
yeah.
with what was originally the case coming out of high school? Because it felt like, well, and it didn't feel like that was the case, that Oklahoma was the school that was tugging at Marvin Jones' heartstrings down the
Yep.
stretch. And he had a flight booked to come shoot his commitment video the day that Lincoln Riley left for USC.
Yep.
That's how close Oklahoma was to getting that kid. And it
Yep.
was known at the time. It was known at the time, certainly. Not like front page of every single digital publication, but there was a growing sense at the time that, oh, Oklahoma is like really emerging here to land. It was Marvin Jones, Jay Sean Barham at the time.
Derek
Uh,
Moore,
Derek Moore was already locked in, had been for a long time.
Gabriel
Uh,
Brownlow Dindy. Yeah.
and then, yep, and that was poised to be a really really impressive haul for Oklahoma in the 2022 class on the defensive side of the ball. And then Lincoln Riley drops a nuke and leaves for USC, and you're left picking up the pieces. But were it not for Jamar Cain's departure, there's still a very good chance Marvin Jones would have wound up at Oklahoma anyway out of high school. And we saw what happened with Gabriel Brownlow Dindy. Calvin Thibodeau's not retained. Gabriel Brownlow Dindy says, "Okay, bet I'm going to Texas A&M."
Mm-hmm.
Kind of felt like it was a similar deal with Marvin Jones. Jamar Cain's not getting retained. Okay, bet I'm going to just go to Georgia.
Yep. It's exactly what happened, actually. And I remember, I know that Chavis was one of the top guys automatically as far as Venables coming over and everything like that. But I remember there being some discussions between Venables and Kane, and one of the topics was, if you hold on to me, you're going to end up with a ridiculous group of edge rushers, and that didn't take place. But we'll see. The other one, what was? Oh my gosh, the D end at Alabama, really good one.
Jihad
He,
Campbell,
Jahad Campbell. He was committed to Clemson.
he was.
Venables left. Chavis left. And I remember at Venables' uh, presser in front of everybody when we sat inside the Everest Center. Remember that? And
I do.
all the players came in and all that. I remember talking to but he's not on staff anymore, a staffer, and they were talking about Jihad Campbell coming and visiting Oklahoma, getting, because he hadn't signed yet, and he was going to come do a last second official. But BV, didn't want to take from, and he ended up at Alabama. So, anyways, yeah, there's a lot going on. Have you heard anything on Westmoreland yet?
So it feels to me, and this is just me triangulating based on a number of conversations that I've had, because I can't get anybody that outright say, and understandably so, yeah, we this is our hierarchy. We want this guy, this guy, this guy. This is the order in which we want them in. But based on how this has unfolded, you can pretty safely infer that Marvin Jones Jr. is the guy that Oklahoma most wants.
Yep.
which makes a ton of sense. 6'5", former 5 star, all the potential in the world, some modest production at the P4 level, nothing explosive, nothing that, makes your eyeballs pop, but he's done it. He's done
Mm,
it at the P4 level. Now, I tend to be a little bit more preferential towards Mo Westmoreland because although he comes from the G5 ranks, he was probably the best player in Conference USA this past year. He's a guy that's going to play NFL ball, and he dominated that league,
mm,
dominated it. Different strokes for different folks, right? Maurice Westmoreland is a really, really good defensive end. Marvin Jones Jr. is a really, really good defensive end. Marvin Jones Jr., based on the way that this has played out, would seem to me to be the highest priority guy for Oklahoma because he is/was on campus.
mm.
Maurice Westmoreland and William Whitlow, they've engaged with Oklahoma. They've discussed visit plans. Those are tentatively in place, but nothing is finalized in that capacity yet. As far as a date, as far as, all right, here's your plane tickets, you're coming. That's something that, as of right now, those players intend to happen, that Oklahoma intends to happen. But what happens if Marvin Jones says, all right, I'm a Sooner. Forget Texas. I'm going to commit to Oklahoma. At that point, does Oklahoma really have any reason to continue pursuing Maurice Westmoreland
If
and
our
William
Mason
Whitlow?
doesn't return,
And
yeah.
that's the only thing. And that
Mm,
is kind of where you turn the page. What is going on with our Mason Thomas? He posts
yeah.
the cryptic video with
What the hell was that?
Greece, and that's the point, Brandon. No one knows what the hell it is. That's exactly the point. He is milking this thing for all it's worth. I think it's kind of funny. I know the fans hate it. I know they just want a conclusive decision. They just want something final, set in stone. They want to know whether they can count on our Mason Thomas being back in 2025 or not. Everything that I've heard and continue to hear points in the direction of our Mason Thomas coming back,
Same.
but
Yep.
he's getting his money's worth right now as far
Yes.
as making the most of the process and letting it linger.
Yeah, and again, talked to somebody today, and they were like, "Mom really has been digging in and asking other parents around the program what their advice should be." Most everybody, it's like, "Hey, you should probably come back," and it all depends on like the position, right? I think trying to think of a position that's like short lifespan. I guess running back would be one.
Running back
You're
has a
running,
very like
yeah.
famously short lifespan. Yeah.
So if you're a running back, I guess, yeah, you probably go and get everything you can right now if he was a running back, but he's not. He's a DN, and those guys
He's a true
notoriously,
junior, right? Like
yeah,
it's
he's
not like
young.
considering whether you're going to come back for a sixth year or not. No, he's 21 years old.
Yeah, and so I mean, he's probably got a 12, 13, 14 year career ahead of him as long as he's healthy. And so I don't I, it doesn't make a lot of sense not to return, I guess, because he's third, fourth round right now. He comes back. Let's say he gets 9 to 11 sacks this next season again. He's probably going to be a late first to early third round pick.
Oh yeah.
That's
Oh yeah. He doesn't. I'd be surprised if he gets to round 3 with another year of 8 or 10 sacks
yeah.
because that is exactly like
It's Nick Benito.
carbon copy of the
Mhm.
Nick Bonito trajectory, right? Could have entered the draft after 2020. Could have been a mid round pick. Chose not to. Decided, you know what? I'm going to run it back. I'm going to see what I can get out of year 4 at Oklahoma. Comes back. I think he had what 8.5, 9 sacks in
Nine
2021.
sacks. Nine
Enters the
sacks.
draft. He's a second round pick, and now he's one of the best defensive players in the entire NFL.
And he almost came back for a senior
Yeah.
season.
So
Boy, could you imagine that with Venables?
the
Oh,
Nick Bonito comparison has always been spot on for our
yeah.
Mason Thomas, all the way down to where they came from, right? Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
Yep.
And it continues to hold up in every capacity imaginable. And should he come back for another year, I expect it'll be exactly that, Brandon. He will probably wind up with 8 or 10 sacks. He will probably see his stock continue to rise up NFL
Yep.
draft boards, and he will be off the board by the midpoint of day 2.
Yep. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money, and you have a good chance to land on a good team when that happens as well. So yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense not to return, but everybody's situation is different. So you don't want to look at it in one trajectory, right? There's multiple versions of how this could play out, and I think he returns. Everything I've been told, he's likely to return, but we'll see. I mean, I'm curious the Owen Waffle situation, Parker.
Mm.
Let's talk about that because
Owen Waffle.
this whole thing is crazy interesting. Like Oklahoma is so talented on the defensive front, right? You have a chance to bring our Mason back and add Mo Westmoreland, a Marvin Jones Jr., an Owen Waffle. Um, oh my gosh, who's the other one I'm missing here? Goodwin, right?
Whitlow.
Woodlow, right? Goodwin
Yeah,
Woodlow,
yeah,
right?
Whitlow.
Yeah. I mean, crap, bro.
I
Like they
here's
and every one of those guys are like awesome.
well, and here's the way I look at it, right? You have 6 scholarship defensive tackles right now. Is that enough, Brandon?
It isn't. You have to bring in one, and if you could bring in one that's going to play and play a lot like him, what?
And one that has a top 100
Get a 2-for-1
prospect of
deal
a
out of
younger
it? Are you
brother
kidding me?
in the
Yes.
2026 class, because not just about Owen Waffle, it's also about Luke Waffle, who again, top 100 player, 6'5" defensive end in the 2026 class. If you can bring in Owen Waffle, the former 4-star who took a red shirt this past year at Michigan, 6'2", 298-pound defensive tackle. You bring him in because he's a really good football player, but you also bring him in because it drastically increases the likelihood that you make a splash at defensive end in the 2026 class.
Mm-hmm. Bang. Do it.
I I see no
Do it.
reason not to. Absolutely no reason not to.
By the way, that 2026 defensive line class has a chance to be just straight nasty, by the way, for Oklahoma. Luke Waffle, we're talking about Overton. What? And then Oklahoma, there's a lot of people who believe that Oklahoma leads for Deuce Gerald's. So, like, that's if those were the three that you brought in, Parker,
Yeah.
they're going to be good on defense for a while. And they are going to be. Like, they're going to get portal guys. Like, defense is never going to be an issue at Oklahoma for a while.
Here's my proposal. You land Owen Waffle, you land Luke Waffle. You pair them with Eddie Pierre Louis and Daniel Akinkunmi on a podcast entitled Pancakes and Waffles. Brilliance. That's what you come here, folks.
Don't give away our NIL stuff to people. It's already copyrighted, folks. Don't do it. Don't do it. All right. So where do you think things stand there?
With Owen Waffle,
Yes.
obviously hard to say until he gets on campus, but he liked Oklahoma a lot out of high school.
We're almost committed, yeah.
Yeah,
He's very good friends with Logan Hallen.
indeed.
Played on the
Good
same
connection
team.
there. Yep.
Yep.
And, like,
I bet he hosts him. I bet.
and there will be schools that have very, very strong connections to the Hun School, which is
Yeah.
a football factory up there in New Jersey, that are either they're already in play for Owen Waffle or they're going to get on the horn with him and his folks. Iowa comes to mind. They've rostered Hun
Mhm.
kids in the past. Rutgers is right down the road. But, like, let's call it like it is, Brandon. If you have the opportunity to play at Oklahoma, you have the opportunity to play at Rutgers. Where are you going?
You're going to Oklahoma.
It's not much of a decision. It's not. And
Not at all.
so I I feel like this is one that Oklahoma's got to have
Yep.
because of not only the fact that Owen's a really good football player and can offer you something, and especially his youth, 4 years of eligibility, a full 4 years at his disposal. He doesn't have to rush anything. You don't have to rush anything. You can let him develop at his own pace alongside some of those other talented young defensive tackles. But also, you land Owen, It gives you a phenomenal shot to land Luke.
Yep.
And you could use a big time defensive end in the 2026 class. That's a win that I feel like would be very welcome at that particular position because it was a light class in 2025. The Sooners took CJ Nixon and Alex Shieldknight. Good players, right? But CJ Nixon was a non rivals 254 star. Alex Shieldknight was a high 3 star. Luke Waffle's a top 100 player in the nation. That's a splash, Brandon.
Yep.
That's a splash for Miguel Chavis.
Yeah, I look. I think the second R. Mason Thomas gets drafted, Ethan Downs gets drafted. Um, I mean, Woolard finds his way on a roster. I think things start to get a lot easier for Chavis in recruiting, right? Like it just does. So yeah, and obviously Chavis didn't coach Nick Benito, but I think his success ultimately rolls into the success for Chavis. Ironically enough, Benito's success is being coached by the same person that gave him the success in college, in Jamar Kane. That's the funny part in it all. So at Denver. So funny how that works. I are you are you just feeling better about things? The season sucked.
It did.
Granted,
Yeah.
everybody, yeah.
Yeah, sure.
But knowing what we know now, as we sit here on January 3rd, you feeling better about the 2025 season? Schedule notwithstanding, like we all know that that schedule sucks.
Am I feeling better? No. Am I
Okay.
feeling worse? Also no. My opinion on the 2025 season and the outlook therein has not meaningfully changed.
Okay. So let's dive a little deeper there.
Okay.
Let's say in the spring they add another really solid offensive lineman and a wide receiver. Um, because somebody transfers, I don't know who, and there's a spot open. So one leaves, one comes in. Let's say Ethan O'Connor, Marvin Jones Jr., Waffle go to Oklahoma. You feeling better then?
Slightly. Slightly.
It
I
all goes
think
back to the schedule, doesn't it?
well, yeah, and also, what do O'Connor, Waffle, Marvin Jones Jr. all have in common? They all play defense. My questions are concentrated on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, but okay, fair, fair. But John Mateer, you feel good about John Mateer. You
Yeah,
feel
well,
good about Michael. You feel good about Michael Hawkins and his potential. Let's say, if God forbid, I'm knocking on this wooded desk, something happened. You feel okay because Hawkins is going to go in and make plays for you. Like
yeah,
you feel
absolutely.
like he's going to
Absolutely.
grow and get better and better and better.
Yeah, and my big thing is, and I don't claim to have the answer to this question because I don't think we'll know. I don't think we'll be able to draw conclusions. The game isn't played on paper. We're not going to be able to know for sure until spring
Chemistry.
camp kicks off. But my question is and has been, where outside of quarterback have you gotten better on the offensive side?
I think offensive line. Derek Simmons. What was he? He's a top 40 player in the portal.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah,
you
nice
got better
addition,
there.
certainly.
Yeah, you got
Nice
better
addition.
there. I think you're better all around at offensive line next year because you got all that freaking experience now. Like you
And you're
walked
going to be
in,
healthier, you'd assume.
you
Like,
will be
yeah,
healthier and you will be all. Again, I said it over and over and over. This year sucked, but long term, that 6 and 7 season might have been the best thing that ever happened to that offense because now all those young cats got all that experience, whether offensive line, wide receiver, running back, quarterback, all that, like all that experience that they weren't supposed to get this year. And it happened. Did it suck that it happened? Absolutely. but you can feel a lot better about 25, 26, 27 because of that experience, right? Like you have to feel better about they can't get worse.
You're
That's
right
my
about
point.
that.
They cannot get worse. Experience does not make you worse. I've never seen that before. So they've got to be better. I think Logan Hallen's going to be a superstar before it's all said and done. I believe that. I know almost everybody in the Switzer Center believes it too. That's what they're like so sold on him. If they weren't sold on Logan Hallen, they would have went and got another transfer portal guy at tackle. But they believe so much in him. Um, EPL, everybody believes in him, right? You got to go get a center. You got to go get another center. I think that is you have to because what happens if ever goes down? Where do you go?
I mean, do you have Eddie Pierre Louis try and snap? I mean, I defer on a lot of things to my radio
Josh
colleague.
Sosa, like, do you want to go down that route?
Yeah,
Like,
well, I defer on a lot of things to my radio colleague Teddy Lehman when it comes to judging guys' positional fits, especially in the trenches. Because he played ball at such a high level. He sees so many things that it
yeah,
takes other people several rewatches to pick up on. He can pick stuff up in the moment. It's part of what makes him a phenomenal color analyst.
mm-hmm,
He and Damian Mackey are two of the absolute best at it, and I'm fortunate to get to work with both of them.
yeah.
But Teddy has said, look, I think Eddie Pierre Louis could be an amazing center if
Does
that's
he
where
have the
Oklahoma
mental
played him.
capacity for it? I think that'd
And
be my
that's the
biggest
big
question.
question.
Mhm.
Yeah. And again, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. I would assume Bill Bedenbaugh has a handle on the answer to that question, but
Yeah,
he's about the only one that's going to have a firm grasp on that.
you want to know who I think would be really good at it
Who's
and
that?
probably have a good mental capacity for it? Fabichi Wewu.
Hmm. You're bringing in Owen Hollenbeck too, which
Yeah,
like he
monster of a human being. By the way, God.
I don't know if he winds up being Creed Humphrey, man, but that kid is nasty and he
Mm-hmm.
is really strong and he is really smart.
That he
And
is. He's a
he's a
great
center.
kid too. Yeah,
Center all the way for this program.
yeah,
So
no
between him
doubt.
and Isosa, there's no experience there and that's a little bit uncomfortable. But if ever it goes down, you could turn to either one of those guys and I don't know, you could hope that they'd be able to hold it together. I'd
Yeah,
feel okay about that. I'd be lying if I said I felt great, but I'd feel okay.
yeah. So, so you're kind of indifferent on this because you said that everybody the additions are on defense. I think if you can get the defense to go from 16th to like top five, that's more wins. I think at least two more wins, right? If you can jump about 10 more spots on defense, well, even top 10, I think you've probably got a couple more wins underneath your belt, right? Potentially with the offense, with Mateer at quarterback, like you would think on paper. Again, this is all on paper at this point
Mm-hmm.
because we don't know. I'm just kind of big picturing it here. Basketball, what do you think? Big game. Like you're gonna really get to see. Like I think Oklahoma's been tested. They played some really good teams already. This, I mean, a
Yeah.
lot of they've had a really hard schedule, and they've bested every challenge. But going to Tuscaloosa against that roster that Alabama has, do you think they pull it off? Are they coming out 13-1? Probably. Yeah.
I
Come on, just be real. Yes, we
I'd
both
pick
think they're probably
Alabama.
losing. Yeah.
I'd pick
Yeah, me
Alabama.
too. Okay.
Yeah. Like I
It is what it is, man. Yeah. Yeah.
but look, Jeremiah Fears may make a believer out of me here in these next few weeks. I just I'm
Are you not a
always
you not a believer of him yet?
No, 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 I'm sorry.
Oh,
I'm
you're
sorry.
talking about the
I
team.
phrased that incorrectly.
Team.
That made it
Okay, you're
sound
talking about the
like I
team.
question Jeremiah Fears. I do not
You're
question
questioning a
Jeremiah
top
Fears.
five pick.
Yeah, that
I
dude is
question a top
ridiculous.
five pick.
That dude is ridiculous. But I guess what I'm getting at is can he and he alone elevate this team to legit contender status in the SEC once they start playing conference opponents twice a
Mhm.
week? And I I'm still worried by this team's lack of size. I still worry as to whether your favorite player, Sam Godwin, is going to be able to hold up in the paint against SEC bigs.
That was
That's
sarcasm, folks.
yeah, yes, that was sarcasm. That's my big apprehension. But from everything we've seen so far, man, they look really impressive. They're a fun team to watch. And it feels like even though Fears is the straw that stirs the drink, it this team isn't a one trick pony like they were the Trey Young year. You know,
Yeah.
there are a multitude of ways that they can beat you, and there are a multitude of guys that can hit the dagger, hit the big time shot in a big moment to elevate this team and to vault them to victory. So I'm excited to see what happens against Alabama. That'll tell us a lot about where this team actually stands. We'll have to resist the urge, as always, to overreact one way or another because the
Right.
first game of SEC play is not necessarily going to be indicative of where this team will become the last game of SEC play. But if you can put a big marquee win in the W column, then, man, you're getting really, really close to being able to chill a little bit on Selection Sunday. Because 13-0, man, you only need to win 6, 7 more games.
Hmm.
That's all it's going to take to
Particularly
very
because of their schedule.
comfortably. Yeah.
Yeah.
You get to 20 wins, you're in.
Easily. Yeah. I think 18 or 19 will probably get you just because of how they started the season and the teams that they beat to start the season were so good
Mm-hmm.
that I that to me was I think that was probably the biggest surprise, right? Like we all figured Oklahoma was probably going to be what 7-6, maybe 9-4 at the start of conference play, and they're one of the lone. How many undefeateds are left?
It's
Do
like
we know?
2, 3. It's not
Yeah, they're
many.
one of the few, right? Like, there's not very many.
Yes,
It's
one of the very
great,
few.
and the wild part is no matter. I, National is just like you and me. Like, they still kind of question the program. You don't question Porter Moser as a coach because you know he's done it and he's really good coach. You question his luck at Oklahoma because he started like this a couple of times already. Not so much 13-0, but he started off really hot. And it just kind of fell apart. Like last year, they got up to number 7 in the country after they started off hot. The year before, I think they were what, 9, 8, 9, something like that, and then fell back out of the top 10. But everybody's kind of, no, 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 we're not falling for this again.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to stay at 10 or 12. If you beat Alabama, okay, your butts are going to be up in the top 5 probably. But you're not moving until you beat somebody in conference play that says, okay, they're for real and they're not just non-con bullies. And I think that's fair. It's fair. It's frustrating if you're an Oklahoma fan because, damn, man, they beat so many good teams already. It's like respect, respect, respect. Oh, we'll respect you if you actually do it in conference. We've seen you do this before. 2 years in a row, actually. Is it 3 years in a row? This happened already? Porter, this is year 4 for Porter, right?
Yeah, it's been 3 years.
Yeah,
He's
three
thrown
years in
us
a
a
row he's done this. He got us all. You remember when the first year when they beat Florida at home? I was at that game. I'll never forget that. It was like right after Riley left.
Yep.
Talked to Marvin, walked up to my oldest boy and was talking to him, and
Marvin Mims, that is.
Marvin Mims, sorry, yeah. So we were talking, and we were actually talking about how good the basketball program was, and whether he was going to stay or go, and all that type of stuff. And he ended up coming back, but they beat Florida that day, and we were all like, "Oh my God, this team might be a Final Four." Like the Groves brothers, blah blah. We were so naive. We were
Yes.
so naive.
Yes. We drank the Kool-Aid. All of us drank the Kool-Aid.
So yeah, I think it'll be a close game though. I do not think they're going to get blown out. The thing Oklahoma has in the tournament, you don't need bigs anymore. Like, yeah, it's great to be big, have some bigs for rebounding and all that, but scoring you don't need. What makes Oklahoma such a challenge for everybody is they're so good on the perimeter. And Jalen Moore is such a unicorn with his size and his ability to dribble, drive, shoot the rock. He's a better 3-point shooter this year that it feels like this team can. Like again, I don't want to drink the Kool-Aid too much, but it does. It feels like this team does have the makings. That was kind of the issue, right? With all the other Porter teams, they didn't really have great guard play. They had decent post players. Their guard play was up and down, right? Like Gibson got really hot, but he got hot and then he would go cold and he would like be non-existent. What, back in 2022 and 2023, just be non-existent, or 2021 and 2022, excuse me. But this team, they have a multitude of guys that can shoot.
Yeah, and that to me is a super exciting reality
Yeah.
because I think that's one thing that they've conspicuously lacked the last couple of
Yeah.
years in particular is a guy, well, multiple guys that can step up and nail one from beyond the arc on a consistent basis.
Mm-hmm.
They have not been the greatest outside shooting team under Porter Moser.
Nope.
Um, they got several guys, Bryson Goodine, Duke Miles,
Duke Miles has
certainly
been hot
yeah,
lately.
certainly
Whew.
Jeremiah Fears. Jalen Moore, man, what's helping Jalen Moore
Yep.
round into form as a potential NBA guy is that he's much more reliable from beyond the arc as he than he was last season, I should say. And so, yeah, man, you got a team where anybody on the floor at any given moment can step up and hit the three ball. You got potential to go a long way in the tournament.
You got the best screener of all time,
You
Sam
talking about Sam
Godwin.
Godwin? Uh-huh.
The pick handoff that he always does at the top of the key. It's like you know where the ball is going when they dribble down, but nobody even. And I get why they don't deny it because he can oh my gosh, man, um, he can just drive back and they can just throw an alley oop or whatever. But yeah, that's it's still funny. Like I'm like, dude, you know where the ball's going. The second they cross half court, Sam Godwin posts at the top of the key. They pass it to him. Then he does a pick handoff, and then the movement starts. It's like rinse, wash, repeat. But whatever. Um, Before we go, what junior day is coming up? I think January 25th, I believe, is the first junior day for Oklahoma. I think that's right. That's a Saturday, right?
I don't
January
even want to
25th.
think about that right now. Ugh.
Yeah, that says January 25th.
Oh man.
It never stops, bro. Never
No,
stops.
it doesn't.
It. We're working on a list, or I've already started working on a list, but I suspect some pretty solid names to be there. There's a chance. There's a chance that there's a 5-star D lineman there. There's a chance.
Hmm.
So we'll see. We'll see. He's made it there enough, and we're talking obviously um, about Deuce Gerald's that
Yep.
he's made it there enough that I believe it'll take place. If it doesn't take place at this one, it'll take place at the next one. And then he will be, I believe, at the spring game right now. That's kind of the buzz and the early plans. So we'll see. But man, Oklahoma's in a good spot. It's unbelievable. Georgia hasn't even offered him. How wild is that?
A 5-star?
They have
They haven't even
not.
offered him? Holy smokes, man.
If they have, they've done it. It's been fairly
And here's the
recent.
reality with Gerald's, right? It's a lot more difficult to sell him on the future at Oklahoma. It's a lot more difficult than it was 4 months ago before you went 6-7. 6-7 complicates things. It makes things more difficult.
Yeah, they
And
haven't
so
offered him.
yeah, if you're gonna eventually close the deal on Deuce Gerald's, it's gonna take one whale of a recruiting job, and the staff has done that so far. But we're about to really see what kind of chops they have when their backs are against the wall. Not just with regard to their job security, but with regard to recruiting, because recruiting on the heels of your second 6-7 season in 3 years, man, it's tough. It's a lot tougher than it was in the good old days when you were landing top 10 classes year in and year out.
Well, the good news is that he's really, really tight with Jaden O'Neal, like super tight.
Mm, things you love to see.
And so, with that relationship, and let's just say if Jaden O'Neal isn't a part of the Oklahoma 2026 class, it's because something went horribly wrong and or Brent Venables is not around.
Okay.
That would be it. So that like that's happening. So, anyways. All right. Um that that good? We good?
Yeah,
All
let's
right.
call it.
Let's call it. If you're not subscribed to this YouTube or any of our podcasting platforms, whether Apple, Google, Spotify, I don't know, whatever you listen to us on, Audible, go ahead, subscribe, give us 5 stars. Please give us thumbs up right here on our YouTube if you're watching this on YouTube. Thank you guys so much. Subscribe, subscribe, subscribe. It helps us out so, so, so much. If you're not a member of OU Insider VIP, I say this all the time. Like, there's so much going on, whether it's junior days, whether it's basketball, baseball, softball, whether it's transfer portal, defensive, staffing, all that type of stuff. Like, we've got you covered. Like, we dropped multiple notes already today, multiple notes yesterday. Dude, New Year's Day, Parker and I dropped 4 notes. He dropped 2, I dropped 2. So like there
No
is
days off.
always, huh?
No days off.
No days off. Like there are always notes being dropped on OU Insider, insider notes galore. We have you covered. I promise you. And our community is the best. Like it's awesome. It's flowing. It's nonstop garb. Whether you want to talk about a movie, whether you want to talk, it doesn't matter, man. If it's OU football, basketball, baseball, softball, recruiting, transfer, staffing, movies, you want to talk about something that happened in your family, you want to pass something on to somebody or try to get, it doesn't matter. The community is awesome. Come join us. I promise you it's worth it. $9.95 a month, $99.95 for the whole year, unless you're a college student with the .edu, you're a teacher with a teacher's email account, or you're active duty with the active duty email account. You got to email us from those accounts. You got to email us from the .edu if you're a college student. Doesn't matter what college you go to. You got to email us from your teacher's account. Doesn't matter where you teach. You're a teacher. You have a teacher. You dot whatever it is from your school, and or active duty, whatever branch you're in, because we love our military people. We'll give you OU Insider for $11.95 for the whole year. Just got to email us, ouinsider@rivals.com. Email us from your .edu if you're a college student, your teacher's account if you're a teacher, or active duty military email account, and we will hook you up $11.95, less than $1 a month. All right. That's going to do it for this version of the OU Insider Under the Visor Sooners podcast, powered by Riverwind Casino. Thank you so much for our new sponsorship. For Parker Thune, my name is Brandon Drum. You guys have a blessed day.